just drank a sip of water too quickly as I pressed go live. But welcome. That's a what not to do for today. But we're talking about what not to do in terms of Ginni Thomas, Trump's interview with Wendy Bell, and his various posts on his social media platform, his rapidly collapsing debt burden social media platform, Truth Social. And what else are we talking about? Oh yes, treason, espionage, etc. So right now there's a closed hearing at a court in Florida, a federal court, where they have, and let me just check this with a reporter who's there, that the Florida court has turned the Wi-Fi off to block the media from reporting this Trump hearing in real time. It's a hearing with a Trump-appointed judge, Judge Alina Cannon, appointed after Trump's election loss in the lame duck period between November 2020 and January 2021. And the hearing is about whether or not Trump deserves a special master in concordance with his claims to have executive privilege over the documents he took improperly, because all government documents belong to the government and to the people of the United States as a consequence, to his private property in Mar-a-Lago. Actually, not even private property, to his property in Mar-a-Lago that has a big degree of access to whatever foreign agents or whatever people pay the $200,000 membership fee to be able to roam around Mar-a-Lago. So, to backtrack, Trump wants a special master appointed with regards to the search of his Mar-a-Lago property by federal agents operating on a search warrant validated by Magistrate Judge Reinhart. Oh, is it Judge Reinhart? Let's look it up because I don't want to mispronounce his name. He's Jewish and he's been very slandered by right-wing media, including Fox News, who put up an image, a doctored photograph by which Jeffrey Epstein's body had superimposed on it the face of Judge Reinhart, near a picture of Ghislaine Maxwell holding up Jeffrey Epstein's foot to her chest. And then they apologized for doing that. And I guess the judge has too much dignity and privacy to bother to take them to court to sue them. They said, oh, yes, it was just kind of a joke. We were sharing a meme from the internet. All right, let's look up his name. Judge Reinhart. Yes, Judge Reinhart, Reinhardt, if you wanted to look him up for yourself. Bruce Reinhart is his full name, the judge who approved the Mar-a-Lago search warrant. Although there's other Reinhardts. Okay, there's Bruce Reinhart. There's a different judge called Stephen Reinhart as well, but that's a different person. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's make this bigger so we can have a look at the live reporting from Sarah N. Lynch, a reporter. Who's she with? She is for Reuters. Okay, but because Wi-Fi had to be turned off in the courtroom, there's only a message so far from one MSNBC court reporter who was in the courtroom with Trump appointee Judge Alina Cannon, and not much seemed to have occurred at that point. Trump's attorney, the former Florida Secretary, what's SG stand for? Secretary General, stressing that all of these events are unprecedented and we need to lower the temperatures. Well, sure, except Trump's going live on Wendy Bell talking about the great injustices meted out to the violent seditionists who sought to overturn the government and the results of the presidential election on January the 6th, and saying that he would strongly consider pardons, presidential pardons, should he run for re-election and should he be elected for a non-consecutive second term. because Trump's one of those very few American presidents that lost the opportunity to have a second term due to being overwhelmingly rejected by American voters, 81 million of whom voted for his opponent, Joseph Robinette Biden, even though Trump still managed to successfully deceive enough Americans whose racism or gullibility or a combination of the two motivated them to cast a vote for a second Trump term in 2020. And I say racism or gullibility or a mixture because you had to be pretty racist to overlook that Trump was using the fascist technique, the tried and true fascist technique of denigrating a minority group, i.e. Mexicans, in order to be provocative and be provocatively racist, to ride over the civilized guardrails of not being openly racist and not nakedly inciting disparagement of people belonging to a minority group. Trump appealed to all of those people who said, we resist the increasing requirements of civilization to refrain from broadly disparaging ethnic groups or racial groups or national or groups from another nationality. There we go. All right, so what are we looking at? Yes, someone responds to Harry Litman's comment about the limited reporting from the Florida courtroom by saying, yes, theft of classified intelligence by a former president of the United States without any remaining security clearance is indeed unprecedented. And of course it is. It is unprecedented. It's Benedict Arnold on steroids. It's Andrew Jackson on steroids. It's a whole heap of really awful things. And of course, some of us have been mentioning that for a rather long time because some of us recognize the signs and symptoms of not only a fascist leader, but also fascist cult followers who've taken on obstacles in relation to their ability to engage with evidence and their ability to accept quality information from the media. Not that I point to any one media source as being without fault or a perfect example of how to help educate the public and deliver quality information for the public to take on board in a process of self-educating. The media isn't perfect, but you have to be able to sample a broad diet without just writing off large swathes of at least well-intentioned media as being fake news, or as Hitler referred to it when he was in power, Lügenpresse, meaning lying press, because tyrants and fascists typically disparage those who report on their wrongdoings in order to feed into this fascistic tendency to elevate a strongman father figure who promises pie in the sky style to solve all problems and to simplify all moral questions into a simple denunciation of enemies, and claim that previously they were not allowed to denounce enemies and they were not allowed to be clear-sighted about true threats. Fascists present themselves as people willing to be authentic and honest, but what they really are doing is feeding off anybody with a passing sense of grievance or dissatisfaction with the status quo and promising a return to a glorified, myopic past, golden past, in which everything was perfect. So in Trump's world, a return to making America great, a return to America's past can be accurately framed by saying a return to the freedom to be racist without consequences. Freedom to push back against the various boundary setting efforts made by activists and people working at the forefront of civil rights and the progress of civilization to say, nope, we don't want people denigrating Black people unfairly. We want honest history to be taught. We want Americans to know about the history, even of the poem behind the national anthem, which celebrated no refuge for the hireling or the slave, meaning that slaves who sought to fight on the British side in the War of 1812 died without achieving their dreams of freedom. And that's celebrated in the second less sung verse of the national anthem. We can look at some of that history today because not a lot of people know it, I don't think, and I certainly only made my acquaintance with some of this information today. It's important to take it on board. It probably irritates some people. Why is an Australian pointing out some of the background racism behind America's points of mutual celebration? Like, everybody comes together to sing the national anthem. Sure, but do you want to cut yourself off from knowing who the person was who wrote the poem that makes up the lyrics of the national anthem? Do you want to know that he owned slaves, fought intellectually against abolitionists, and celebrated the continuation of slavery? All right, I put this up on the screen so that we can have a look. I'll make it bigger. This is a comment from former Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. Which state did she represent? Missouri. And she's currently an analyst on NBC News and MSNBC. So she's reading a transcript from a hearing about Hillary Clinton's emails. Representative Cummings. Oh, that would be Elijah Cummings. Okay, he's asking then FBI Director James Comey. This is on July the 7th, 2016. So Mr. Cummings said, today we learned some significant new facts. I hope the press listens to this. First of all, you clarify that you were talking about only 3 emails out of 30,000 your office reviewed. Is that right? Director Comey says, yes, 3. 3 out of 30,000, is that right? Comey says, yes, at least 30,000. Okay, so you confirmed that these 3 emails were not properly marked as classified at the time, based on federal guidelines and manuals. They did not have classification headers. They did not list the original classifier, the agency, office of origin, reason for classification, or date for declassification. These emails only included a single quote, C, and then end of quotation mark for confidential, 1 paragraph lower down in the text. Is that right? So third, you testified that based on these facts, it would have been a, quote, reasonable inference for Secretary Clinton to, quote, immediately conclude that these emails were not classified. There is one more critical fact, that these emails were not, to the press, these emails were not classified. The State Department explained to us yesterday. They reported that these emails are not classified, and that including this little C on these emails was the result of human error. The bottom line is those little C's should not have been on those documents because they were not, in fact, classified. When Representative Watson asked you a few minutes ago about this, you testified that you had not been informed. I understand that. I'm not beating up on you, I promise. But you tell us why, because Republicans are pouncing, saying Secretary Clinton lied. And so I want to make sure we are clear on this. Right, so 3 emails that contained a little C, and that was a result of human error. So they weren't actually classified emails, 3 emails out of 30,000 that were investigated. 3 emails not classified at the time, that's it. And Comey belittled Hillary Rodham Clinton on July the 5th and then had to recant to Cummings 2 days later. It's on YouTube. Comey distorted the truth, but the media ran with it. And that was her receiving, not sending, a total of 3 emails out of 30,000 that had a little C on them, and the little C's were there as a result of human error because the State Department confirmed that the material in those 3 emails was not, in fact, confidential. Wow, and we can even see the testimony. That's going to be exciting.
At least 30,000. Understand exactly what you testified to on the issue of whether Secretary Clinton sent or received emails that were marked as classified. On Tuesday, you stated, and I quote, only a very small number of the emails containing classified information bore markings. And I emphasize, bore markings, indicating the presence of classified information, end of quote. Republicans have pounced on this statement as evidence that
because I don't have something about adjusting the volume.
But today we learned some significant new facts, and I hope the press listens to this. First, you clarified that you were talking about only 3 emails out of 30,000 your office reviewed. Is that right?
3, yes.
3 out of 30,000. Is that right?
Yes, at least 30,000.
At least 30,000. And you confirmed that these 3 emails were not properly marked as classified at the time based on federal guidelines and manuals. They did not have a classification header. They did not list the original classifier, the agency, office of origin, reason for classification, or date for declassification. Instead, these emails included only a single quote C, parenthesis, in parenthesis, and then end of quotation mark for confidential on one paragraph lower down in the text. Is that right?
Correct.
Third, you testified that based on these facts, it would have been a quote reasonable inference for Secretary Clinton to quote immediately, end of quote, conclude that these emails were not in fact classified. So that was also critical new information. But there's one more critical fact, that these emails were not in fact, and that is this, Director, and to the press, these emails were not in fact classified. The State Department explained to us yesterday, they reported that these emails are not classified and that including the little C on these emails was a result of a human error. The bottom line is that those little C's should not have been on those documents because they were not in fact classified. When Representative Watson Coleman asked you a few minutes ago about this, you testified that you had not been informed, and I understand that. I'm not beating up on you, I promise you. But can you tell us why, Director Coleman? Because I want, because Townsend saying that the Secretary lied, and so I want to make sure we're clear on this. Can you tell us why, Director Coleman, did you consult, and we're just curious, did you consult with the State Department about these 3 emails out of the more than 30,000? Did this just not come up? What happened there?
Yeah, I'm not remembering for sure while I'm here. I'm highly confident we consulted with them and got their view on it. I don't know about what happened yesterday. Maybe that their view has changed or they found things out that we didn't know. But I'm highly confident we consulted with them about it.
All right, so James Comey is someone that Republicans, including Trump, are often highly critical of, and they want to get Comey for being favorable to Clinton, because Clinton should be prosecuted. Clinton should be raided by the FBI. Turns out 3 out of 30,000 emails had a little C in them that was placed in there from human error anyway. The contents weren't classified. And Comey is reviled for being a friend to Clinton. He clearly is so anti-Clinton that he would have denigrated Clinton in a hearing and called her careless for receiving 3 emails containing not actual classification headings, not classified confidential headings, but a little C down in the second paragraph that was improperly included, and that the contents weren't actually confidential. So nothing burger, that's a nothing burger. But James Comey is supposed to be the best friend to Hillary Clinton. It kind of shows how intense the game is of working the refs from the Republican side, that they can control so much of modern discourse in the United States by pressuring the media. And pressure was put on James Comey as well, likely from Trump supporting members of the FBI in the New York bureau, who threatened to leak more about the emails recovered from Anthony Weiner's laptop that he shared with his wife. Well, did he share it with his wife, Huma Abedin? And in any case, that made them then have... Huma had emails. She was an aide to Hillary Clinton, and so they could look at the emails some more, but they weren't actually fresh emails. They were just additional copies of the same emails that they'd looked at from Hillary Clinton's devices, and now they were looking at from her aide's laptop that had been taken on board by the FBI, because Anthony Weiner is a terrible person who improperly communicated with girls, because he's a pervert. And damn you, Anthony Weiner, but more broadly speaking, damn Republicans for so working the refs that they could make a big deal out of 3 out of 30,000 emails that didn't even have any confidential or classified information in them, thus giving America a huge Benedict Arnold Russian asset treason person. I call him a Russian asset because he openly asked for Russia's help, and he definitely got help from Russia, as was documented in much of the Mueller report, which, yep, we saw a redacted version, but there was still indictments for people in Russia who were in charge of the Internet Bureau that used a lot of Russian Kremlin resources to uplift Bernie Sanders, because Sanders and his supporters ran with their own version of the big lie that Sanders was stolen from in the primary elections, even though Hillary Clinton convincingly won by millions of votes. And there certainly wasn't a Russian campaign to promote Hillary Clinton, who was hated by Vladimir Putin. But instead, yes, you had Bernie Sanders and his big lie that his supporters promoted, and definitely behind the scenes Russians masquerading as Americans promoted that as a strategy for reducing voter enthusiasm, as a turnout deterrence, as a Democratic vote turnout minimizer in the 2016 election. So that's one way in which Trump benefited from Russian interference, because not only did Russian actors on the internet paid Russian government trolls, not only did they promote Trump, but they promoted Bernie Sanders and promoted the false narrative that he was stolen from, and that this travesty should be avenged by registered Democrats choosing not to go out and place a vote for Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. So yeah, lots of travesties. And the thing is, when we hear about an injustice, we want to learn why it happened so we can take steps to avoid a repeat of the same type of travesty going forwards. We want to know, what is it about the American collective psyche that leaves it vulnerable to Russian attacks? How can we minimize the fault lines in American society to minimize the opportunity that Vladimir Putin has to exploit those fault lines and to make merry with his strategy of weakening the West and undermining democratic governments that might pursue renewable energy options that reduce the appetite for Russian oil and gas. thus reducing Vladimir Putin's own personal revenue streams, because it's reported that he gets a significant cut of the profits of fossil fuel sales in his country. Because he's not just a president of Russia, is he? He's kind of kleptocrat in chief. He gets to steal with impunity from the Russian people, and their democracy has been rendered essentially dysfunctional through Putin getting to imprison his political opponents without cause. So Alexander Navalny, who's currently languishing in a Russian jail, and he was arrested before he could run against Putin. And Donald Trump is not currently a candidate for a presidential election. There is no presidential election until 2024. But some people are suggesting that he may be able to avoid indictment and prosecution because it's only a few months till the November midterm elections. And even though Trump isn't a candidate in those elections, he is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. Let's get Comey's face off the screen. We don't really need that, do we? Oh yeah, I said I was going to talk about Ginni Thomas, and I will. I'm just going to see if there's any more conclusory statements that we should make. Oh, yep. Okay. Trump's argument about all of the classified documents found at his property, not 3 little emails received by Trump, but documents that he took, that he is reported to have personally packed, and boxes and boxes of documents. So he had a filing yesterday from his lawyers that implies he still thinks he has, or still thinks it's worthwhile to assert that he has the right to possess those documents, even though there's a legal procedure to follow to declassify documents, and there's some documents that are so top secret, actually, that a president doesn't have the authority to declassify them. But Trump wants to make that argument, I'm sure in part because as a fascist, he believes that riling up his supporters to violence is a way to deter functional operation of the legal system. It's a way to deter prosecutors. He presumes it's a way to deter Merrick Garland, the current Attorney General. He assumes it's a way to deter juries from convicting him of the crimes which he undoubtedly committed. I'm not part of the mainstream media. I don't have to say allegedly. Trump undoubtedly stole documents, continued to have documents in his possession even after he was subpoenaed. His lawyers falsely signed an affidavit saying that they had searched the property themselves and that there was no more classified documents that remained on the Mar-a-Lago premises. Okay. So that's why Trump's attorney is stressing that Trump has the right to documents as a former president. It's not an argument that's likely to succeed. And in fact, in a court of law, it might succeed in riling up some Trump supporters, some persistently gullible Trump supporters, to violence, even though they can see for themselves what happened to the other gullible people who obeyed Trump's tweet command to go to Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January will be wild. And many of those people who allowed themselves to be whipped up into a violent frenzy are now facing jail sentences of 7 years, 4.5 years for the worst offenders who violently attacked Capitol police officers, Metropolitan DC police officers, all with an aim of intimidating Congress into throwing out electoral college votes that gave Biden his presidential victory, or taking members of Congress hostage until the election results were overturned, or something else on Trump's agenda, which was even to just delay the counting of the electoral college votes so that it wasn't certified on the constitutionally appointed date of January the 6th. Because his lawyers were in the background making arguments to various members of the Republican legislatures in different states that if some constitutional traditions were messed with, then other constitutional traditions were messed with. So their argument was clearly going to be, January the 6th, counting of electoral college votes didn't happen, so the next thing also shouldn't happen. Biden is now not officially the president-elect. We should do other things, like accept these slates of alternate electors, or we should follow that constitutional provision of throwing the election results to the House of Representatives and allowing, as is a provision of the Constitution, one representative from each state to then cast their own ballot for who should be president, in which case the Republican representatives would have outnumbered Democratic representatives. Because even though proportionally speaking, the Democrats represent more people and there's more elected Democrats in the House, if you just go one per state, then the number of states that are dominated by Republicans is higher. So yeah, that constitutional provision to resolve a contested election would have awarded Trump an election victory, an undeserved election victory. And that's part of the January the 6th scheme as well, is to just cause a delay, even if they couldn't intimidate congressional members into opposing the results of the election and throwing out the electoral college votes, even if they couldn't persuade Mike Pence to violate his role as a gavel banger, a rubber stamper of the electoral college results. They had a variety of strategies to try and effectuate to make Trump have an illicit second term, which would have turned him into a completely unaccountable despot, because it would then be established that he didn't have to face the voters, that he could orchestrate any political outcome he wanted using violence, intimidation, and law-breaking rubber stamped by willing co-conspirators in the Department of Justice. In 2020 and early 2021, it was Jeffrey Clark, an environmental lawyer in the Department of Justice, who was on board with sending a letter to state legislatures asking for them to question the election results and so not send in a slate of electors for Biden, even if Biden had won the state, and to contest the election results and to undo their certifications of election results, to say, oh yeah, we take it back. We no longer certify Biden's victory, even though our state has been through the process of counting the votes and it's evident that Biden won. Jeffrey Clark in the Department of Justice was prepared to act in a manner without principle or conscience and to betray the voters of the majority of voters of the American public in a variety of states. All right. Oh, and this is an important note. Doesn't exist anymore? Why doesn't it exist? Oh, it's been deleted. Oh, Andrew Weissman might have deleted it because he's a little embarrassed about saying something so emotive. But he says the Trump team in court opposes this more detailed inventory becoming public. And it tells you everything, as the government said it was okay unsealing this more detailed inventory. Why doesn't the Trump team want this detailed Mar-a-Lago search inventory made public? Because it would be inculpatory, not exculpatory. So inculpatory meaning incriminating. Exculpatory means is something that speaks to innocence. Inculpatory is something that speaks to likely criminality occurring. Now let's see why Andrew Weissman, a former prosecutor on the Mueller team, has clarified. Andrew also wrote a book called Where Law Ends, Inside the Mueller Investigation. I did hear him on a podcast last week saying how upsetting it was in the 3-week interval after Robert Mueller completed his report. The team completed their report, and William Barr misrepresented the report to the public and said, oh, yep, I'll release it soon. And there was a 3-week interval between him saying, oh, yeah, no, I'm going to release it. But look, it's not that big a deal. Trump clearly didn't commit obstruction. That's what the report says. And it wasn't what the report said. And it just would have been very aggravating to the members of Robert Mueller's team. Now, I have some bones to pick with Robert Mueller for doing what a lot of white people do, which is bend over backwards to let Republicans get their own way and to not upset Republicans. To extend so fully the procedural courtesies that are often denied to Democratic candidates. So Hillary Clinton didn't have the protections of procedural courtesy because James Comey broke procedural standards when he, 11 days before the election, came out and announced a new investigation into Hillary Clinton and her emails, because some new emails had come to light when they weren't new. They were just the emails as stored on Hillary Clinton's aide's laptop, which was under investigation because of Anthony Weiner's inappropriate criminal sexual activities. All right, let's have a look. What has Andrew Weissman said? Weissman thinks for the DOJ that filing they made yesterday, you don't make a filing this strong, bold, and factually accusatory if you don't have every intention to indict. So a lot of people do think that the DOJ has... Whoop, what is that? That's an ad. See update from latest reporting from the courthouse. Trump team opposed unsealing taint team report. Agreed with government to unseal enhanced inventory, and so court ordered that. Okay, so his update on his tweet before that I read out loud saying Trump team opposed unsealing the extended enhanced inventory. They don't oppose that, okay? They oppose unsealing the taint team report. What's the taint team report? The taint team report would be... I don't know, maybe people describing where they found the various classified documents. Here's a look at Trump's many recent guests at Mar-a-Lago while a trove of classified documents was on the property. Michael Flynn, Mike Lindell, Carrie Lake, Matt Gaetz. Who's George Hamilton? Vanilla Ice, and Alex Rodriguez, and the Nelk Boys. So clearly some of these are entertainment people. So Vanilla Ice is a former popular singer. Let's look up George Hamilton. Is he a race car driver? He's an American film and television actor. Okay. From Your Cheating Heart, Once There's Not Enough, Light in the Piazza, By Love Possessed, and Home from the Hill. All right. And he won a Golden Globe Award for Best New Star of the Year. So he's a Trump supporter, and he was also one of the guests who would therefore have been on a property where there were unsecured classified documents. I want to hear about some of the foreign guests as well, because Trump has no commitment to protecting American national security interests. Oh dear, hair is no good. There. All right. The US is in a housing downturn, which is good in terms of property prices falling and making housing a bit more livable. But yeah, there may be a recession. Judge Cannon didn't issue a ruling. Okay. But she raised concerns about the review and didn't seem deterred from her initial view that she was inclined to appoint a special master. And this is even after the 40-page document from the DOJ that was very thorough in its puncturing of Trump arguments. So she has unsealed the detailed inventory. Judge Cannon has unsealed the detailed inventory of what the FBI seized from Mar-a-Lago and the investigative team's status report. So she might still appoint a special master for Trump, but the thing is, it's very delayed. If the search happened a few weeks ago, the DOJ has had the materials. They have people with security clearance to go through them. Even Trump's lawyers acknowledged that a special master would require special security clearance, acknowledging that the documents that Trump took improperly and illegally with him are classified and require someone with security clearance to be authorized to even review them. Judge to issue written ruling and is not ruling from the bench orally. If judge did not order the Department of Justice to stop any review, that is a very good sign for the DOJ. Yeah, maybe a good sign that she appreciates that there is no point at this point, too late, to order a special master. Oh yeah, this is other cool news. That the lawyer for the Oath Keepers, whose name is Kelly Sorrell, she is 43 years old. I remember that. She's been charged not with seditious conspiracy. She's been charged with obstruction, I think. A non-speaking indictment. For tampering with documents in a grand jury investigation, in addition to charges for entering the Capitol grounds on January the 6th. She has claimed to be the new leader of the Oath Keepers since Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, was imprisoned. He's awaiting trial. So she was arrested on Thursday after being indicted on 4 charges: conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an official proceeding, obstruction of justice, and a misdemeanor count of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds. The indictment alleges that she corruptly persuaded and attempted to corruptly persuade other persons with an intent to cause and induce such persons to A, withhold records, documents, and other objects from an official proceeding. That is the grand jury investigation into the attack on the United States Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. And B, alter, destroy, mutilate, and conceal objects with intent to impair the object's integrity and availability for use in such a grand jury investigation. Sorrell was on encrypted chats with members of the Oath Keepers, and the FBI had seized her phone last September. Sorrell was featured in the January 6th committee hearings and spoke extensively to the committee. Well, that's exciting. She was a volunteer with Lawyers for Trump during the 2020 election, and she previously told NBC News that Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes had tried to get her to give him her contacts with Donald Trump's team before the January 6th attack. And Rhodes and other members of the Oath Keepers are facing charges of seditious conspiracy. One Oath Keeper who pled guilty to that charge, William Todd Wilson, told a judge that he heard Rhodes on the phone with someone in Trump's orbit on the night of January the 6th, telling the person to have Trump call upon groups like the Oath Keepers to forcibly oppose a transfer of power. All right. During the call, according to Wilson, Rhodes tried to talk to Trump directly, but the person on the other end denied Rhodes' request to speak directly with President Trump. The Oath Keepers, including Sorrell, then headed to a suburban Olive Garden. So which was that, January the 5th? Oh no, on the night of January the 6th. So after the insurrection, after the riot at the Capitol, the leader of the Oath Keeper was still trying to get in touch directly with President Trump to make a statement saying, I call upon these right-wing militia to forcibly oppose a transfer of power. Goodness gracious. Business Insider 5 hours ago had an article saying all the economic good news, from jobs to inflation, was just a momentary blip. The worst is yet to come. Yeah, could be the case. Let's listen to Joe Biden talk about calling.
Republicans have awakened to the powerful force in America, the women of this nation.
Oh, yeah.
MAGA Republicans don't have a clue about the power of women. Let me tell you something. They are about to find out.
Yeah, one hopes. So, white women, pull your finger out and take note of the risks that we are all at if Republicans gain access to a majority in either the Senate or the House, or both, and pass federal legislation banning abortion. Because already miscarriages in Republican-controlled states are more akin now to crime scenes. Chemists are refusing to fulfill women's prescriptions. Even a 55-year-old woman reported the other day having her prescription refused to be filled by a chemist. I think my husband's closing his door because he's maybe had enough of listening to me talk. I have been talking for a while. I can hear him typing. So if I can hear him typing, he can probably hear me talking. It has been a long broadcast. All right, well then let's cover the last fact. That Lindsey Graham has been opposing a subpoena to testify in the Georgia case, given to a grand jury by Georgian Attorney General Fani Willis, investigating Trump's interference into the election results. His calls to the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to say, hi, can you please find me 11,780 votes? That's all I need to win the state of Georgia, to overturn the actual results of Biden's victory. And that Lindsey Graham was reportedly on board with those efforts and is also on tape contacting Georgia officials asking for the results to be overturned. So the court has replied to Senator Graham, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. The court does not find that it can simply accept Senator Graham's sweeping and conclusory characterizations of the calls and ignore other facts in the record that call Senator Graham's characterizations into question. because Lindsey Graham can't just call it a fact-finding mission if he was trying to pressure people. They hide behind as much plausible deniability as they can. Or it was just asking to find out. I mean, did they have 11,780 votes lying around for Trump that they hadn't counted yet? Because that's all he needed. Just asking the question. So the court again declines to quash the subpoena in its entirety. As to the issue of partial quashal, quashal's a real word. I'm going to use that in Scrabble. The court quashes the subpoena only as to questions about Senator Graham's investigatory fact-finding on the telephone calls to Georgia election officials, including how such information related to his decision to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. The court finds that this area of inquiry falls under the protection of speech or debate clause, which prohibits questions on legislative activity. As to the other categories, the court finds that they are not legislative and the speech or debate clause does not apply to them. As such, Senator Graham may be questioned about any alleged efforts to encourage Secretary Raffensperger or others to throw out ballots or otherwise alter Georgia's election practices and procedures. Likewise, the grand jury may inquire into Senator Graham's alleged communications and coordination with the Trump campaign and its post-election efforts in Georgia, as well as into Senator Graham's public statements related to the Georgia 2020 elections. Well, that's good. So I found a good summary of that bit. If he asked any questions that were genuine queries, he can't be asked about that, but he can be asked about his efforts to get Secretary Raffensperger to overturn the election results and to alter in any way the practices of election officials counting and conducting reviews of the election results in Georgia. Ha ha ha. Good. Graham's got to testify still. He's only got a partial quashing. A partial quashal was the word they used. Quashal. And I'm just sharing that in case anybody else wants to use it in Scrabble. Good use of the letter Q. If you get Q on a triple letter score, you're doing well. All right, everybody. Well, take care, goodbye, and all the best until my next broadcast. End broadcast. Oh, and for anybody who is watching from Twitter, I can't see Twitter comments and therefore can't respond to Twitter comments using this platform on StreamYard. Maybe I'll contact StreamYard and ask them if they're going to fix that because it would be handy. Take care. Goodbye.